So you've been running your peptides exactly like the protocol said, right? You're following it, you're doing good. Same dose, the timing, your injection sites, you're rotating, like you're doing all of it, but they're just not hitting the way that they're supposed to or what you'd expect. And before you blame the vial or the source, or you convince yourself that you've got handed underdosed products or just bad products, there's something you need to know. You see, there are mistakes quietly undoing your peptides that have nothing to do with any of that. It's almost never the peptides themselves, it's what you're pairing with it. And here's why I can tell you that with a straight face. You see, this isn't theory for me. See, when I coach thousands of people through these exact stacks, the mistakes, they stop being opinions and they start being patterns. And many of the same ones present themselves over and over again. I'm Dr. Jones, DC, and I run the coaching side of our peptide and nationwide GLP-1 clinic, where my medical team handles the prescriptions and I handle the coaching. These aren't maybes. These are the 10 things that I actually watch sabotage results. And number one is something half of you mixed into a single syringe this week and didn't think about twice. So let's begin. Number one is combining two peptides into a single syringe that were never cleared to go together. Now, I need to be careful here because I can already hear half of you saying, but Dr. Jones, people mix peptides in a single pen all the time, and nobody can point to a single interaction study proving that it's a problem. So we're all just guessing here. And you're right that the published data is thin, but here's what the people saying that are missing. This isn't a coin flip that you can predict. This is chemistry, and chemistry doesn't care what the forum said. So when you pull two separate compounds into the same syringe, you're not just combining two different doses of two different peptides, you're putting them into the same chemical environment. Different peptides hold their stability at different pH levels, different concentrations. Some have preservatives that can interact, and obviously some are completely fine. You put the wrong two together and the mix can turn unstable before the needle ever touches your skin. So you think you're injecting two full compounds, but you're injecting a compromised dose. The vial didn't fail you, the mixing did. And there's a tell that most people walk right past. If you ever combined two peptides and the solution turned cloudy, or you saw little particles, or it just looked off, that wasn't nothing. That's usually the chemistry breaking down right in front of you. People shrug sometimes and still inject it. Like, don't do that, okay? Now, here's where it gets interesting, because this is exactly why something like our Wolverine stack or our Glow or Clo stack exists in a single vial. People here don't mix peptides in one syringe and they think that contradicts it, but it doesn't. You see, the difference is actually everything. When a compounding pharmacy formulates the BPC 157 and TB 500 together, that's the Wolverine stack, that combination was built and tested to be stable together. Same with the multi-peptide blends in the Clo and the Glow. The pharmacy did the chemistry first to ensure stability. Now, what I'm telling you not to do is play pharmacist at your kitchen counter, grabbing two vials from two different sources and deciding that they'll get along because they're both healing peptides. Formulated together by people who verified it holds. Combined by you on a guess, because some people said they did it before, that's not going to hold. And that's number one for a reason. And I also want to clarify this. Yes, no matter what, even what the pharmacy does, stability will decrease when you mix peptides together. That's almost guaranteed. But the stability decrease is very minor when the compounding pharmacy does it. And that's the key. And that's why it's true when you hear people say don't mix them together because stability decreases. But the nuance that I've just clarified for you is basically when it's done right with certain compounds by the right people, you can mix them together. And that's a good thing, because you might be thinking, why don't I just inject separately all the time to just play it safe? And you totally can do that, but then you have to worry about multiple injections if you're taking multiple peptides, and then lipohypertrophy, which is scar tissue underneath the skin, is a real thing. So just make a decision, make a smart decision, and now you know how to approach it. Number two, starting a stack of brand new peptides all at the same time. I get the logic, right? You're excited, you got the whole protocol lined up, you want to run it. But think about what happens if something goes sideways. I had a patient come in and tell us they were running 5 compounds. He'd started the same week. He was feeling awful, and he had no idea which one was the problem. Was it one of them? Was it 2 of them reacting? Was it the dose on just one of them? There's no way to know. He changed 5 variables at once. And when that happens, the move is the same one that we use in the clinic. Stop everything, let things settle, right? Whatever side effects you're feeling, then reintroduce one compound compound at a time so that your body can actually tell you what's working and what isn't. You can't read a signal when you've buried it under 4 other signals. You add them one at a time and your results will tell you a story instead of a shrug. Now, once again, there's nuance here. When you're working with a professional team, there are certain peptides that you can take at the same time. When you've done it on enough people and you've seen thousands of different reactions or lack thereof, you get clinical experience and wisdom that tells you, hey, it's okay. We don't need to go one by one and so granular with these peptides, but these ones we absolutely need to. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that we do. So here's exactly what we do. We prescribe your peptides through our 503A pharmacy. You get a medical team that's actually reachable by text or phone for the exact moments a question like, can these two be ran together come up? Real humans, not a ticket system. And if that's the situation that you're in right now, just text the number on the screen, guys, or check out the link in the description to book yourself a free discovery call. Either way, let's keep this going because the next one is a mistake that people make thinking that they're being more aggressive about results, not less. Number 3, running 2 GLP-1 medications or a GLP-1 plus another incretin at the same time on your own without any professional help. See, here's the objection I get instantly, and it's a fair one. Wait, if one agonist helps me lose weight, shouldn't 2 help lose more? Retta plus tirzepatide, let's add a little cagrilintide. Isn't that just stacking the deck? It feels like it should work that way, but it doesn't. See, a lot of these medications hit the same receptors and pull the same levers: appetite, gastric emptying, blood sugar. So when you stack 2 of them yourself, you're often not adding a second effect, you're just hammering the same lever twice. You're not doubling the fat loss, you're mostly doubling the downside because both drugs pull the same levers. What climbs is the nausea, the gut shutdown, the fatigue, more misery, and a bigger bill for a result that likely one of them could have gotten on its own if you ran it correctly. Now, here's the distinction that nobody draws for you, and it's the important one. Think about tirzepatide. People call it a double agonist, and it is, but it was engineered as one molecule, built from the ground up to hit 2 targets in a balanced tested ratio. That is not the same as you buying 2 separate compounds and running them both because more sounded better. One was designed by people who measured the interaction, the other is a guess. So am I saying to never combine GLP-1s? No. Again, there's nuance, and this is where it matters. Our medical team does use specific combinations in specific cases, like tirzepatide and retatrutide for people struggling with food chatter but need the metabolic benefit of retatrutide. Labs have to be ran, and there has to be some intelligence and design behind it. You don't just throw them at somebody and hope for the best. Number 4, leaning on anti-inflammatories. Your ibuprofen, your naproxen, the stuff that you grab without thinking while you're running peptides to heal at the same time. You see, here's the tension that nobody connects. You pull a muscle, your shoulder's barking, so you take the painkiller to get you through the day. Totally reasonable. I mean, I try to avoid pain pills as much as I possibly can. But think about what you're actually asking your body to do. The whole point of a healing peptide is to drive an active repair response. So you want that area working, signaling, and rebuilding. See, NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, ibuprofen, they do the opposite. They're built to quiet inflammation down, and some of that inflammatory signaling is part of how tissues actually repair itself. So you've got one thing in your system trying to turn the repair process up, and you got something else trying to turn it down. Now, I'm not telling you to white knuckle through real pain, talk to your provider, but every time you reach for the bottle out of habit, you may be working against the exact environment that your peptide is trying to build. There are non-NSAID pain relievers. And also the big takeaway here is, do you really need to take pain pills? Like, is the pain really that bad? Is a 2 or 3 out of 10 something that is ruining your day? Or is it just, well, I'll take them because I never thought there was damage. Now that you know it's not good for you, not in terms of just your peptides, but overall health, can you tolerate the 2 or 3? Because I think most people can, but you've never been given the opportunity or even asked from the perspective of understanding why you should try to not take the pain pills, right? The complications and the interactions with your health. Number 5 is alcohol. Now, it's in your fridge, it's at every dinner, and it's quietly undercutting almost everything you're running. You see 2 angles here depending on what you're on. If you're on a GLP-1 medication, your stomach is already emptying slower. That's part of how it works. You add alcohol on top of that, and you're pouring it into a system that's holding everything longer. Now, one of my patients, she put it perfectly. A few drinks, and then than days of barely being able to eat. And if you're running healing or recovery peptides, alcohol wrecks your sleep and it interferes with the repair that you're paying that peptide to drive. You don't have to live like a monk. You know the Friday night couple drinks is competing with the results that you've been chasing all week. And on that note, number 6, and this is the one that people roll their eyes at right up until it cost them sleep debt. I had a patient convinced that his peptides were duds. Clean source, right dose, yet no results. Now he was ready to throw the whole protocol out and blame the vials. So we actually looked at what he was doing day to day. He was sleeping 4 hours a night. That was it. That was the whole story. The peptides weren't failing him. He'd given it nothing to work with. See, here's the part that I want you to sit with. A peptide doesn't override a broken foundation. It doesn't make things worse when you're underslept. It just can't deliver what it's capable of. Now, a huge share of your recovery, growth hormone repair, the work that your body does to rebuild, it happens while you sleep. You cut it to 4 or 5 hours and you've kneecapped the exact systems that your peptide is trying to support. Now, I've heard someone else put it like this. So you sleep 4 hours and blast your training volume and you just wasted the vial. He's not wrong with that statement, but real quick, if you want me to break down how I personally achieved amazing, consistent sleep, like what I do, the habits, let me know in the comments because I found that it can literally unlock your superpowers. And I do read these comments and it does help influence what videos I decide to do next. Number 7, overtraining. Now this one specifically bites the people who are most motivated. So you start a recovery or a performance peptide cycle, you feel good, so you push harder, more volume, more frequency, more intensity, because if some training is good, then more training must be better. Now there are times where overtraining can be a tool. Many times you guys don't need overtraining right now. You're not there yet. Now here's the problem. Hard training is a stress signal. You pile on enough of it without enough recovery and your cortisol stays elevated. And chronically high cortisol works directly against the repair and growth that you're running the peptides to get. So you've got your peptide pushing recovery forward and your training volume is holding it back. You're flooring the gas and riding the brake at the same time. And then you're wondering why you're not moving. You see, the peptide buys you a bigger recovery capacity, but it doesn't buy you unlimited recovery. Respect the ceiling or you'll out-train the exact tool that you're paying for. Number 8, extreme fasting while you're on GLP-1 medications. And this one trips up the people who are the most disciplined, right? So here's the trap. GLP-1 already crushes your appetite. So you think, great, I'm not hungry anyways, so I'll just push the fast longer, eat almost nothing, and really accelerate this fat loss. And on the scale, it looks amazing. Like you're gonna lose probably faster. If you undereat and then do some long therapeutic fast, you will lose weight faster than you ever have before. But a lot of what you're losing in that scenario isn't fat, it's likely muscle. You've stacked aggressive caloric restriction on top of a drug already suppressing your intake on the other days with no floor underneath you. That's how you can end up smaller, softer, and weaker. Now, I want to be clear about something because fasting is actually part of what we do. We use it, but the difference is everything that's built around it. When we run therapeutic fasting, it's paired with deliberate refeeds. High caloric days with lots of protein in those days as well, about 1 gram per pound of target body weight. And resistance training is non-negotiable. It gives your body the signal and then you have the calories and protein to protect the muscle. What you do not want is the naked version, just not eating, writing the appetite suppression down with no refeed and no protein and no training to protect what you've got. Fasting isn't the mistake. Fasting with nothing underneath, that's the mistake. Number 9, and this is the one where I need you to actually slow down and listen because it's not about wasted money. It's about safety. Running growth hormone peptides, the ones built to crank out your own growth hormone levels when you have active cancer. Now, here's the thing a lot of people have never had explained to them. I've seen the comments 100 times. Wait, peptides can help cancers grow? Nobody ever told me that. And there's a lot of people that talk about the theoretical surfacing of cancer, which we technically don't know because we don't have enough human trials. I get why that lands as a shock. On the surface, it sounds backwards, but it comes down to one pathway and which peptides actually touch it. Now, the peptides that raise a real flag here are the ones that push up your IGF-1. That's a growth signaling pathway, and it climbs when you rev up your growth hormone. Growth hormone leads to IGF-1 increase. Now, in healthy tissue, that signal is exactly what you want. Better repair, recovery, sleep, younger looking skin. But at the same time, grow and multiply signal is not something that you want amplifying if there are cells in your body you specifically do not want growing, aka cancers. Now, your peptides that drive IGF-1, aka the growth hormone group, this is CJC1295, ipamorelin, MK677, samorelin, tesamorelin. Stay away if you have active cancers until your oncologist signs off. Now, this is not me telling you that peptides cause cancer. That's not the claim here. What I'm telling you is that those growth hormone peptides, an active cancer is a real reason for caution that has to be part of the conversation before you run them. And here's what should bother you. Did the place you got your peptides ever ask that question? A research site shipping vials doesn't ask about your oncology history. This is exactly the kind of thing that a real medical team screens for before anything gets prescribed, because the question itself is the safety net. If nobody asked you, that's not because it doesn't matter, it's because nobody was looking out for you. Number 10, and it's a short one, but it matters: pregnancy or actively trying to conceive. Now, this one's simple. We don't have the safety data to be running compounds like these during pregnancy or while you're trying to get pregnant. And the potential downside isn't worth the optimization. You see, when there's a pregnancy in the picture, the answer is you pause, you talk to your doctor, and you don't experiment. And if you're trying to conceive or there's any chance that you could be pregnant, that's not the season for running a peptide stack. Full stop, okay? And that's the same blind spot as number 9. It's a circumstance that a good clinic asks about up front, and a vial in the mail never will. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. You came in wondering why your peptides weren't hitting and were ready to blame the vial, but look at the actual list. Almost none of these 10 are about the peptides. They're about what's sitting next to it. The thing in the same syringe, the second compound doing the same job, the 4 hours of sleep, the painkillers, the drinks, the fast with nothing underneath it. That's the whole point. And it's the thing that I want you to walk away with. A peptide is the last piece, not the first one. It doesn't fix a broken foundation. It works with a solid one. You get the foundation right, you stop pairing it with the thing that fights it. And that same vial that you were about to throw out starts doing exactly what you hoped it would. And if this reframed how you think about your own stack, the stuff that actually keeps you from wasting your money and wrecking your own results, and be sure to turn on that bell so that you don't miss the next one. Now, if you've been sitting through this whole list, quietly realizing that your stack has gotten more complicated than your information can keep up with, that the combinations are more than a Reddit thread can really answer, and you're tired of guessing which pairing is the one quietly costing you results, that's exactly the situation that we're built for. So here's what we do differently. A lot of these telemed clinics, they write the prescription and that's it, they're gonzo, right? That's not how we work. You get your peptides from our 503A pharmacy partners, and you have access to a medical team that you can reach by text or phone for the exact moments that a question comes up. Can these two run together? Is this reaction normal? Real humans, not a ticketing system. On-demand backup from someone running their own protocol. Just text the number on the screen, guys, or check out the link in the description to book that free call. You'll talk with one of our patient educators. They'll get a read on what you're trying to accomplish, walk through whether it's a fit, and explain how the intake call with the medical team actually works. They design the protocol, and then they've got the hotline when you need it. Now, quick note, before you book, we provide medical oversight on the peptides that we prescribe. If you've already gotten products from another source and you're just looking for someone to sign off on it, we're not the right fit, because we have no clue where in the world you got those peptides from. And one more thing, if you've landed on this video because the real problem is that you're fighting stubborn weight loss issues and you want something that goes deeper than peptides. By the way, my biggest passion is helping you right here. Me and my coaches, we go after the root cause and we help you work towards permanent weight maintenance. Same number, let them know when you speak to them. And if you made it all the way to the end, I want you to be honest with me. Which number on this list were you actually doing? Was it number 1, the single syringe one, the fast with nothing underneath it? Let me know which one hit closest to home. And if you're sitting there wondering, okay, so which combinations actually do belong together, because that's the logical next thought, I broke down the 3 biggest ones: the Clo, the Glow, and the Wolverine stack. There it is right there, guys. Check it out. We'll see you guys later.